Imagine standing in the middle of ancient Rome at dusk. The streets are quiet now, the crowd's gone home, and the city breathes out a slow sigh. You can almost hear the stones themselves talking, a low murmur that says, "We've been here a long, long time." Rome wasn't built in a day, and honestly, that's good. If it had been, it probably would have fallen apart in a week. The Romans were not in a hurry. They believed that things worth building should outlast their builders. So every stone, every road, and every arch was placed with care. Even the way they mixed concrete had purpose. They wanted their world to last forever. And in a strange way, it kinda did. Let's take a quiet walk through those whispering streets. You can hear sandals tapping against stone. There's the faint smell of olive oil and smoke from lamps burning in small shops. Maybe a baker is still at work somewhere, pulling a loaf of bread out of a brick oven, the sound echoing off the walls of an alley. It's not a city rushing, it's a city thinking. Rome, for all its power and pride, was really an empire of planners. They thought about how to move water, how to move people, and even how to move ideas. And that's the real magic. Not just the marble statues and fancy temples, but the quiet genius behind how everything worked. When we talk about Roman engineering, it's easy to imagine huge buildings and giant arches. But it all started small. One brick, one idea, one problem to solve. The Romans didn't invent everything, but they perfected nearly everything they touched. They borrowed ideas from the Greeks, the Etruscans, and the Egyptians, then gave those ideas a new polish, the Roman kind of polish that said, we can make this stronger, straighter, and last longer. That's how they built an empire that stretched across 3 continents. From the hot deserts of Egypt to the rainy hills of Britain, they made sure Roman roads and Roman bridges connected everything. If you traveled across the empire, you could step off one Roman road and onto another, like walking across one endless stone blanket. Pretty cozy, right? But the real secret wasn't just in the roads or the buildings. It was in their mindset, their quiet confidence in structure, order, and endurance. To the Romans, engineering wasn't about showing off. It was about creating peace. Pax Romana, they called it. Peace through design. They believed that if you could build something solid, people would feel secure. And if people felt secure, the empire would last. Of course, the empire didn't always live up to that dream. But still, there's something touching about how much care they put into their world. Imagine workers in tunics, covered in dust, hammering away under the sun, not knowing that 2,000 years later, people would still walk on their stones, or make YouTube videos about them while trying to help others fall asleep. It's funny when you think about it. They were trying to build forever, and now forever is the soft sound of a tourist's footsteps echoing through a ruin. If you listen closely, you can still feel the rhythm of Roman engineering, the tap of chisels, the scrape of stone, the slosh of water being mixed with lime and ash to make concrete. Each sound was part of a song, a slow, patient song that built the world piece by piece. And oh, the concrete! That was their real superpower. While modern concrete sometimes cracks in a few decades, Roman concrete has stood for over 2,000 years. Harbors, piers, even underwater walls are still there, holding strong. Scientists still scratch their heads about how they did it. The secret, it turns out, was volcanic ash, something called pozzolana. The Romans mixed it into their concrete, and when it touched seawater, it didn't weaken, it got stronger. It's as if their buildings had learned to heal themselves. You could say Roman concrete was the ancient world's version of smart material, except theirs didn't need Wi-Fi or batteries, just a little bit of volcanic dust and patience. But the Romans weren't just about materials. They were about balance. Take their arches, for example. To us, an arch might seem like a simple curve, but to them, it was almost spiritual. Each stone leaned on the next, sharing the weight until everything held together perfectly. One stone alone couldn't do much, but together they could carry empires. That's the quiet beauty of Roman engineering. Teamwork, patience, and gravity doing their thing. Even their cities were built with this in mind. Every block had purpose. Roads ran straight, drains flowed cleanly, and water was guided from faraway hills through aqueducts so smooth you could almost mistake them for rivers made by gods. And in a way, they kind of were, at least to the people who depended on them. Imagine waking up in ancient Rome, hearing water running through fountains, knowing that miles away, hidden under stone and grass, engineers had made it all possible. It's easy to forget that all of this, the roads, the bridges, the aqueducts, started as quiet plans sketched in sand by people who never thought they'd be remembered. They were solving simple problems: how to get from one place to another, how to keep buildings dry, how to stop walls from falling. But their answers were so good they ended up shaping history. Now when we walk through the ruins or scroll through pictures online, we're not just seeing old stones, we're seeing ideas that refuse to die. Every crack in a wall, every faded carving is a whisper from those engineers saying, "We built this for you, even if we didn't know your name." And maybe that's the most peaceful thing about Rome. Not the power or the glory, but the patience. They built slowly. They built carefully. They built knowing that someday the city might fade, but the knowledge, the way they solved problems, would keep flowing quietly through time, like water through an ancient aqueduct. So, as the night deepens and the sounds of the ancient city fade, imagine yourself walking past those whispering stones. You pause and touch the wall and feel the cool marble beneath your hand. Somewhere under your feet is a road that once led to everywhere. And in that silence, the empire still lives, not as a noise, but as a hum of design, order, and quiet genius. And as you drift off to sleep, maybe those whispering stones will keep talking, not loudly, but softly, telling stories about how humans once learned to build forever, one stone at a time.
If the Roman Empire had a heartbeat, it was made of stone. Not marble, not gold, just simple, honest stone laid one block at a time, stretching across valleys and mountains, glowing faintly under the sun. These were the Roman roads, and they were everywhere. You could start in a quiet fishing village in Spain, follow one, and end up in the middle of Rome, dusty, tired, but still on the same piece of pavement. And here's the wild part. Most of those roads are still here, still being used. Some are covered in asphalt, others half buried in dirt, but underneath, those same Roman stones are doing their job 2,000 years later. Imagine building a highway today and having it still work in the year 4025. That's not just engineering. That's sorcery. But the Romans didn't see it as magic. For them, it was routine, just good planning. When they looked at the messy world around them, Rivers twisting, forests blocking, hills rising. They didn't sigh and say, "Too hard." No, they said, "Let's go straight through it." And they did. The Romans loved straight lines. Their roads were so straight that even nature had to adjust. Of course, building a straight road through a mountain wasn't easy. You'd have teams of surveyors, soldiers, and workers setting out to carve the earth. They'd use a tool called a groma, basically some strings hanging from a cross-shaped stick, to make sure the road stayed perfectly aligned. No GPS, no lasers, just Roman patience and a bit of stubbornness. Each Roman road was like a layered cake, but not one you'd want to eat. The bottom layer was made of big stones for stability. Then came smaller stones, then gravel, then sand, and finally big flat paving slabs on top. They even curved the surface slightly so rainwater would roll off the sides. Smart, right? They basically invented road drainage before anyone had even thought of drains. When it was finished, the result wasn't just a path, it was a promise. A promise that Roman order could reach you no matter how far you were. Soldiers could march faster, traders could sell easier, and messages could travel at what, for the time, felt like lightning speed. It was their version of the internet, just with more sandals and fewer cat memes. Picture a Roman messenger riding across one of those roads, his horse's hooves tapping in rhythm against the stones, echoing through the morning mist. Behind him, farmers are pushing carts filled with olives. Up ahead, soldiers march in perfect lines, armor clinking softly. The air smells of dust, sweat, and the faint sweetness of wild herbs growing by the road. It's not noisy. It's steady, reliable, the quiet hum of a world connected. That's what made Rome special, not just conquering places, but connecting them. The Romans built over 250,000 miles of roads across their empire. That's enough to circle the earth about 10 times. Some roads led to grand cities, others to tiny outposts in the middle of nowhere. But they all led somewhere, and more importantly, they all led back to Rome. In fact, there was even a saying, "All roads lead to Rome." It wasn't just a poetic phrase. It was literally true. If you followed any main road long enough, you'd eventually reach the capital. It was their way of saying, no matter where you are, you're still part of this giant, organized family. A slightly bossy family, sure, but one with excellent infrastructure. The most famous of these roads was the Via Appia, also called the Queen of Roads. It stretched from Rome all the way to the southern city of Brindisi, about 350 miles away. Built in the 4th century BCE, it was the highway of its time, wide, solid, and beautiful. Some travelers even called it the Shining Path, because under sunlight, the smooth stones looked like polished silver. Walking down the Via Appia today, you can still see chariot ruts carved into the stones. Each groove is a little fossil of motion, the memory of thousands of journeys layered on top of each other. And when you walk there at sunset, it's easy to imagine the steady rhythm of Roman boots echoing in the distance, fading into the warm air. The funny thing is, Roman roads weren't built for comfort. If you tried walking barefoot on them, you'd feel every bump. They were made to last, not to pamper your feet. But that toughness was the point. A road that hurt a little today was better than one that disappeared tomorrow. Even maintenance was an art. The Romans had entire teams called curatores viarum, road caretakers. Their job was to check the roads, fix cracks, and make sure everything stayed in perfect condition. You could say they were the ancient version of highway departments, just with togas instead of neon vests. And when you think about it, those roads were more than stone and dirt. They were symbols. Each one told the same story. Rome is here. Rome is strong. Rome will reach you. They didn't need to shout it. The roads whispered it, quietly, steadily, mile after mile. Even after the empire fell, the roads stayed. Travelers, monks, and traders in the Middle Ages used them without even knowing who built them. The empire had faded, but its bones, those roads, still shaped the world. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The soldiers and engineers who built them are long gone, but their footprints became part of the earth. Somewhere, under layers of dust and grass, those stones are still whispering, still waiting for footsteps. And maybe that's what makes Roman engineering so strangely comforting. It wasn't flashy or loud, it was patient, practical, built for the long nap of history. You could almost imagine one of those engineers saying, "If we're going to make something, let's make it so good that even people who haven't been born yet will still trip over it." So tonight, as you picture those long, endless roads stretching through the dark, winding past olive trees, over quiet hills, and down towards the sea, imagine the gentle rhythm of travelers moving through time. The empire sleeps, the stones rest, but the road never does. And in that stillness, you can almost hear it, a faint hum beneath the centuries, the soft sound of footsteps that never stopped. Because in Rome, even the roads refuse to sleep.
Some people say Rome was built on power, or on war, or on ambition. That's not wrong, but honestly, Rome was built on goo, a very special kind of goo, the ancient world's strongest, most mysterious, most quietly unstoppable material, Roman concrete. Now, concrete doesn't sound exciting. It's basically ancient mud with career goals. But this ordinary-looking mixture is the reason Roman temples still stand while modern parking garages crumble after a few decades. Somewhere out there, a Roman engineer is laughing in Latin. So what was the secret? Let's picture it. The sun's rising over a harbor on the Italian coast. A few workers in tunics are mixing stuff in giant wooden tubs. There's the sound of shovels scraping stone, water sloshing, and someone mumbling about needing more ash. It doesn't look like genius. It looks like breakfast porridge for giants. But inside those tubs, something almost magical is happening. The Romans called it opus cementitium, their version of concrete. The recipe went like this: lime, volcanic ash, bits of rock, and water. When these ingredients met, they didn't just harden, they transformed. The mixture formed little crystals that locked everything together so tightly that time itself had trouble getting in. The Romans didn't have chemistry degrees, but they had curiosity and a lot of trial and error, mostly error, until one day they got it right. The key ingredient came from volcanic areas around Naples, especially near a place called Pozzuoli. That's where the name Puzzolana comes from, volcanic ash that gave Roman concrete its superpowers. When seawater touched this mixture, instead of breaking it down like it does modern concrete, it actually made it stronger. Yeah, you heard that right. The Romans built harbors that literally healed themselves whenever the ocean tried to wear them away. That's not construction, that's sorcery in sandals. You can still see those harbors today, half buried underwater, still holding together like ancient jigsaw puzzles. The waves crash, the tides rise, but the walls stay firm. Meanwhile, some modern bridges fall apart faster than your phone's charging cable. Maybe progress isn't always progress. But what made this material special wasn't just its toughness, it was what it allowed. Once the Romans had concrete, they could dream bigger. No longer limited to stacking stones and boring straight lines, they started curving, arching, and reaching for the sky. Domes? Possible. Vaults? Sure. Gigantic baths with ceilings that look like upside-down bowls? Why not? Concrete gave them freedom, architectural yoga, you could say. If you stood in ancient Rome, you'd see concrete everywhere, hiding behind marble facades. The fancy marble was like makeup. The real strength was underneath. Temples, aqueducts, even apartment buildings used it. In fact, the Latin word testudo means tortoise, and some Romans joked that their concrete roofs were like the tortoise shells of the city, strong, curved, and protective. It's a good image, the empire moving slowly but safely under a shell of stone. The process itself was almost meditative. Workers mixed lime with water, creating a steaming paste. Then they added ash, stones, and crushed tiles. They'd pour it into wooden molds layer by layer, letting gravity do its quiet work.
There were no machines, no cement trucks backing up with beeping sounds, just human rhythm, shovel, pour, tamp, repeat. It must have felt like a slow heartbeat of progress, and maybe that's why Roman buildings feel calm even today. There's something soothing about their confidence. Not flashy, not fragile, just solid. You can almost sense the patience that went into them. They weren't trying to finish by a deadline. They were trying to make something that would outlast generations. No rush, just stone and time having a long conversation. Take the Pantheon, for example. That enormous dome, still the largest unreinforced concrete dome in the world, is almost 2,000 years old. 2,000 years! People built that with wooden scaffolds and buckets, not steel cranes. And yet it's still standing, perfectly balanced, the light from the oculus drifting down like a soft spotlight from heaven. It's one of those moments where you just have to sit quietly and whisper, "Okay, Rome, you win." The trick there was clever engineering. The Romans used heavier concrete at the bottom and lighter concrete near the top, mixing in pumice, volcanic rock full of air bubbles. That way, the dome wasn't too heavy. Basically, they invented structural optimization centuries before computers, and probably without spilling coffee on their blueprints. What's funny is that for centuries after Rome fell, people forgot how this concrete worked. Medieval builders tried to copy it, but never quite got the formula right. It wasn't until modern scientists started analyzing Roman ruins that they realized how complex the chemistry was. Turns out, those old masons weren't just lucky. They were brilliant. Even the cracks in Roman concrete tell a story. When tiny fissures appear, water seeps in, reacts with the ash, and forms new crystals, sealing the damage. So, while modern structures crumble from cracks, Roman ones quietly heal themselves like ancient superheroes of architecture. It's as if their walls are whispering, "Relax, I got this." You have to admire that kind of resilience. There's something almost peaceful about it. Buildings that age gracefully, not crumple in complaint. Imagine if everything in life worked like that. Break your favorite mug, it fixes itself. Have a bad day, a little ash and lime, and you're fine again. The Romans probably didn't see it as magic, but maybe it was a small kind of miracle, born from patience, curiosity, and the right kind of dirt. So, next time you see a crumbling ruin, don't think of decay. Think of endurance. Think of the quiet confidence of a material that refused to die. The Romans may be gone, but their concrete, their humble mix of lime, ash, and ambition, is still holding the world together in small, stubborn pieces. And if you listen closely on a calm night, maybe you can hear it too. That low, steady hum beneath the earth, the sound of old Roman concrete, still doing its job, still whispering, "Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere."
If Roman concrete was the muscle of the empire, then the arch was its smile. Not the kind of smile you notice right away, more like the quiet grin of a genius who's figured something out that nobody else has. Because while other civilizations were still stacking stones in straight lines, the Romans were bending them into perfect curves, and those curves changed everything. Now, the idea of an arch wasn't entirely new. Other ancient builders had used curved shapes before, but the Romans? They made it their signature. They didn't just use arches, they multiplied them. Aqueducts, bridges, colosseums, bathhouses, arches were everywhere. If Rome had a logo, it wouldn't be an eagle or a laurel wreath. It'd be a neat little arch, balanced and proud, holding the world together. Let's slow down and picture one being built. The air smells like dust and wet mortar. A dozen workers in tunics are sweating under the sun, passing stones from hand to hand. There's a wooden frame in the middle, a temporary support called a centering. Each block, carefully shaped, fits just right. One on the left, one on the right, until they meet at the top. That top stone, the keystone, is the quiet hero of the story. Once it's in place, the magic happens. The wooden support is removed, and suddenly the stones hold each other up,
like friends leaning in for a group hug. No glue, no metal, just balance, pressure, and trust. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The idea that something so solid can stand only because all its parts cooperate. One stone alone would fall, but together they rise. Maybe that's why arches feel comforting. They remind us that strength isn't loud, it's shared. The Romans used this secret to build big, really big. Take the aqueducts. They weren't just pipes. They were floating rivers of stone, carried high above the ground by rows and rows of arches. From a distance, they looked like giant stone caterpillars crawling across the hills. And yet every single arch was placed with such precision that water could flow for miles with just the gentlest slope, so smooth you could barely tell it was moving. That's Roman engineering for you, invisible perfection. And it wasn't just about function. The Romans had an eye for beauty. Walk under a Roman arch and you can't help but feel small, but in a good way, like the world suddenly got taller just to remind you to look up. Light filters through. The air feels cooler. Everything seems a little more important. The Romans knew this. They understood that architecture could inspire emotion, not just shelter bodies, but lift spirits. Pretty deep for a bunch of people who also spent afternoons watching gladiators fight, huh? The arch also gave birth to one of Rome's favorite bragging tools, the triumphal arch. These were massive gateways built to celebrate military victories. Picture it, an emperor riding home on a chariot, crowds cheering, sunlight bouncing off white marble. He passes under an arch carved with scenes of his glory, as if even the stone is saying, "Well done, boss." There's still several of these arches standing today, like the Arch of Titus and the Arch of Constantine. They're basically the ancient version of award shows, but with fewer speeches and more pigeons. But not all arches were loud. Some were quietly working behind the scenes, holding up bridges or supporting roofs. They even combined multiple arches side by side to make vaults, long tunnels made of curved stone. Stack a few vaults next to each other, and you've got the basilica, the grand hall that would later inspire the architecture of cathedrals. Stack those vaults in a circle, and you've got a dome. All from one simple idea, a curved line made strong. If you think about it, the Romans were kind of like the world's best problem solvers with a minimalist mindset. They didn't overcomplicate things. They looked at the world and said, let's just make gravity work for us. And somehow, they did. It's also worth noting how long these arches have lasted. 2,000 years later, they're still standing. Not because they were indestructible, but because they were balanced. There's a quiet life lesson in there. You don't have to resist every force. Sometimes you just redirect it. And let's not forget how pretty they made everything look. Roman bridges, for example, were more than just practical. They were elegant. Imagine crossing the Pont de Gare in southern France. Sunlight shimmering off pale yellow stone, the arches reflected perfectly in the calm water below. You'd almost forget it was built by soldiers. That's the funny thing about Roman engineering. Even their military projects looked like art. The Colosseum is another masterpiece of arches. It's basically an orchestra of stone, 3 layers of arches stacked one on top of another, each perfectly proportioned. The result is a building that feels both massive and graceful. It's hard to believe they pulled that off with nothing but muscle, rope, and math done in the dirt. Every time you walk past it, you can almost hear the ghosts of architects whispering, "Not bad, huh?" And that's really what the arches are. Whispers. They don't shout for attention. They don't demand applause. They just stand there, holding everything up quietly, century after century. There's something comforting about that kind of quiet competence. No drama, no crumbling ego, just curves doing their job. Even now, we copy their design without thinking. Every doorway, every tunnel, every bridge owes something to Rome. Every time you pass under an arch, you're borrowing a little bit of their wisdom. The balance, the cooperation, the elegance hidden in geometry. So next time you see one, stop for a second. Look up. Notice the way it spreads weight into the ground. the way it seems calm no matter how much it's holding. That's the Roman spirit. Patient, reliable, beautiful in its simplicity. And as the night falls over the ruins of old Rome, the arches still stand in the half-light. They don't creak or sway. They don't complain. They've seen empires rise and fall, and yet they remain. Curved, quiet, smiling that same small smile they've had for 2,000 years. It's the smile of something that knows its purpose and doesn't need to brag about it. The silent language of stone, spoken softly but clearly. Balance well, and you can carry anything.
If the arches were Rome's backbone, then the aqueducts were its veins, carrying life quietly through the empire. They didn't roar or sparkle, they just flowed. And that's kind of beautiful, isn't it? Because in a city built on ambition and marble, the real miracle wasn't gold or conquest. It was clean, running water. Let's drift back 2,000 years for a moment. The sun is climbing over the 7 hills of Rome. People are already awake, bakers firing their ovens, blacksmiths hammering, kids running barefoot through dusty streets. And somewhere, high above the rooftops, a clear stream of water glides silently along a stone channel, crossing valleys on tall, elegant arches. That's not nature, that's Roman engineering. And it's working perfectly. See, Rome wasn't built in a desert, but it wasn't exactly overflowing with rivers either. As the city grew, wells and springs just couldn't keep up. So the Romans did what they always did best. They refused to accept "that's impossible" as an answer. They looked at mountains miles away, saw the springs glistening there, and thought, yeah, we'll just bring that here. Simple. As if that kind of thing was easy. Building an aqueduct wasn't just a project. It was a quiet symphony of precision. The water had to move constantly, but not too fast. If the slope was too steep, it'd rush and destroy the channel. Too flat, and it would just sit there, lazy and stagnant. So the Romans found the perfect angle, a gentle drop of just a few centimeters per 100 meters. Barely visible to the eye, but enough to keep the water alive. Imagine calculating that without computers, lasers, or even modern rulers, just sticks, sight lines, and instinct. And yet, they nailed it. The Aqua Appia, built in 312 BCE, was the first of many. It ran mostly underground, a shy little pioneer. But as the empire grew bolder, the aqueducts began to rise, literally. The Aqua Claudia, Aqua Marcia, and Aqua Anio Novus, each one grander, stretching across valleys like stone rainbows. You can still see their skeletons today outside Rome, their arches marching into the horizon, sunlit and unbothered by time. They've outlived emperors, earthquakes, and fashion trends. And what did all this water do? Everything. It filled fountains, public baths, latrines, gardens, homes, and even cooled villas of the wealthy. Rome was obsessed with cleanliness, at least by ancient standards. They had hundreds of baths where people met, gossiped, and soaked away the heat. The sound of running water was everywhere, part of the soundtrack of Roman life. Even the poor had public fountains they could use for free. Imagine that. A whole city that never had to carry buckets from the river again. For once, luxury flowed downhill. What's fascinating is how invisible this system was. Most of the aqueduct's channels were underground, covered in stone slabs. You wouldn't even know they were there unless you followed the soft sound of trickling water. Only in the open country would they rise high, their arches stepping gracefully across valleys. No pumps, no pressure, just the perfect balance of gravity. That's the secret. The Romans didn't force water to move. They invited it. They gave it the right path, the right angle, and then let nature do the rest. It's almost meditative. And the construction itself? A masterpiece of patience. Surveyors with simple tools like chorobates, long wooden boards with grooves of water, would measure the land's slope. They'd plan routes for miles through hills, forests, even tunnels carved straight through mountains. Workers would dig trenches, build channels lined with waterproof concrete, opus signinum, and cover everything to keep the water clean. When the aqueduct finally reached the city, it flowed into large settling tanks called castella, where debris could sink before being distributed. From there, smaller pipes carried water to fountains and baths, feeding the city like arteries from a heart. And what's really incredible is how durable they were. Some aqueducts worked for over 400 years with minimal repairs. Even when barbarians cut the water supply to weaken Rome, the stone structures themselves stood tall, defiant, waiting centuries to be rediscovered. One could say the water stopped, but the pride kept flowing. Let's take a quiet walk along one, say the Pont de Garde in France. The evening sun is low, turning the limestone golden. The arches cast long shadows on the calm river below. You can hear birds and a faint whisper of water still running somewhere deep inside the ancient channel. It's hard to believe it's over 2,000 years old. It doesn't look ancient. It looks timeless, as if the builders knew they were making something for eternity. Even in Rome itself, aqueducts weren't just utilities. They were statements. They showed the world that Rome had conquered nature, that it could take a mountain's gift and deliver it neatly, cup by cup, to the heart of civilization. Every drop of water that sparkled in a fountain at the Forum was a little reminder of that quiet power. And maybe that's why the sound of water feels so soothing even today. It's ancient. It carries the memory of stone channels, of gravity at work, of distant springs meeting thirsty cities. The same sound that lulled Romans to sleep, that soft trickle echoing through marble baths, still relaxes us now. It's a small connection across time, gentle and steady. So tonight, as you drift off, imagine that flow, clear, patient, endless. It winds down from the hills through arches and tunnels, whispering to itself as it moves. No rush, no chaos. Just motion in perfect balance. That's the Roman way. Engineering that feels like meditation. The aqueducts didn't just move water, they moved civilization. They turned a dusty city into a living, breathing organism where every fountain sparkled like proof that humanity could work with nature, not against it. And in that soft flow through the night air of ancient Rome, you can almost hear it still. The steady heartbeat of an empire that learned how to make water sing.
If the aqueducts were the veins of Rome, carrying water in majestic silence, then the sewers were the quiet little helpers, taking all the unwanted stuff away so the city could keep smiling. Yes, we're talking about the Cloaca Maxima, the big ancient sewer that still exists in parts today. And don't worry, this isn't gross storytelling. Think of it as the unsung poetry of cleanliness. Rome wasn't exactly a small town. It was bustling, messy, full of animals, people, and a surprising number of public latrines. Without a system to carry away what no one wanted, the streets would have been, well, let's just say unpleasant. And the Romans didn't want unpleasant. They wanted order. So they built sewers. Big ones, solid ones, sewers that have outlasted emperors. The Cloaca Maxima started as an open canal to drain local marshes, but it soon became the backbone of the city's sanitation. Engineers lined it with huge blocks of stone, creating tunnels that could handle both rain and, let's call it, daily human output. It all flowed to the Tiber River, far enough to keep the streets mostly clean, yet close enough to remind Romans of the river's ever-present importance. It's impressive if you stop to think about it. First, they had to calculate the right slope. Too steep, and water would rush and erode the stone. Too shallow, and it would stagnate. Perfect breeding ground for bacteria, which the Romans didn't really want. Second, the tunnels had to be strong enough to hold up the streets above, which were full of carts, horses, and people. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was essential. And it worked. Walking beneath the streets of Rome must have felt a little magical and a little spooky. Dim light, the smell of damp stone, the soft gurgle of water flowing endlessly.
Occasionally, someone might have thrown in a discarded cup or a stray chicken feather, but mostly it was orderly, silent, and steady, carrying the city's waste away so life could go on above. And it wasn't just about hygiene. The sewers were a feat of engineering, teaching lessons about arches, water flow, and teamwork. The Romans weren't shy about hiding their genius below the surface. They built vaults, arches, and chambers that made these tunnels strong enough to last millennia. Some of them are still in use today, quietly doing their job without any fanfare. There's something poetic about it. Above ground, the city sparkled with marble, fountains, and bustling markets. Below, the city hummed quietly, a hidden network ensuring everything above could function. The Romans understood balance. Show your glory above, work your magic below. It's a lesson that still applies, in a weird way, to modern life. Some of the most important work is the stuff nobody notices. And speaking of hidden rivers, Rome had a few surprises tucked beneath its streets. Streams, channels, and even man-made tunnels guided water through and away from the city. Sometimes they ran under temples, private homes, or markets. Engineers had to plan carefully so that foundations wouldn't crumble, and yet the water would still flow. It's almost like the city had secret veins and arteries invisible to the casual visitor, carrying life quietly through stone corridors. The hypocaust system is another quiet marvel related to hidden engineering. While not exactly a sewer, it's worth mentioning here, because beneath the floors of bathhouses and villas, hot air circulated through hollow spaces to warm the rooms above. It was subtle, efficient, and genius. Romans could enjoy a warm bath on a chilly morning, and all the hard work stayed hidden underground, almost like an invisible hug from the empire itself. What's charming is imagining the workers who maintained these systems. It wasn't glamorous, and it wasn't celebrated in poetry. But imagine the satisfaction of watching centuries of tunnels stay intact, carrying water and waste just as planned. One could say these hidden rivers were the quiet heartbeat of civilization, just like your own heartbeat, unnoticed but essential. Even emperors who often basked in marble glory relied on these subterranean marvels. Without sewers, there would be no clean baths, no healthy streets, no fountains for the citizens to admire. The city's elegance depended on what was hidden, and that's a lesson even today. Sometimes the most important work is the stuff nobody notices. And if you visit the ruins now, you can almost sense that hidden energy. The stone is smooth, worn by centuries of water, echoes, and occasional footsteps of curious explorers. It's engineering that isn't flashy, but it's comforting in its reliability. Imagine drifting through the city at night. Above, the Forum is quiet, statues casting long shadows. Below, the Cloaca Maxima carries its endless flow, unseen, steady, dependable. It's a little reminder that even in chaos, there's order. Even in filth, there's function. Even in silence, there's genius. And maybe that's the magic of Roman hidden engineering. The aqueducts brought in water, the sewers carried waste away. Above ground, the city thrived. Below, it worked like a perfectly tuned machine. It was thoughtful, patient, calm, and it lasted longer than most human ambitions, a quiet legacy buried just beneath the noise of history. So as you picture yourself walking the empty streets of Rome tonight, remember to glance down. Not literally, the sewers are still there, but it's best not to fall in, but metaphorically. There's a world of quiet, steady effort beneath your feet, still shaping the city long after emperors have turned to dust. A reminder that true brilliance doesn't always need applause. Sometimes it just flows. And as the moon rises over ancient Rome, casting silver light on stone and water alike, listen carefully. The city is still alive, not with crowds or horses or shouting, not with glory or conquest, but with water, hidden rivers, and the silent, enduring hum of ingenuity. Rome sleeps above, but beneath the streets, the empire's heartbeat continues, quietly, endlessly, like the perfect lullaby for the world.
Imagine standing in the middle of ancient Rome, looking up at the Pantheon. Not just a building, a dome so perfect it feels like the sky itself is leaning down to peek inside. Even today, 2,000 years later, it's easy to forget that humans built it. Not aliens, not magic, just Romans, some stone, concrete, and an absurd amount of patience. Temples in Rome weren't just places to pray. They were statements, a way for mortals to say to the gods, "Look, we made this." Carefully. And boy, did they make them carefully. From the perfectly aligned columns to the smooth marble floors, every element was designed to awe, to inspire, and to last, like a postcard from history, written in stone. Let's focus on the Pantheon, because it's the crown jewel of Roman temples. Its name literally means all gods. A clever marketing move, really. Bring everyone in, no one feels left out. You step through the massive bronze doors, and your jaw slowly falls open. Above you, a dome so large it seems impossible. And at the center, the oculus, a round hole letting in sunlight or moonlight or rain. It's like the building is winking at the heavens, whispering, "We've got a direct line." The Pantheon's dome is more than just pretty. It's an engineering miracle. The Romans mixed heavy concrete at the bottom and lighter concrete at the top, often with volcanic pumice, a naturally airy stone. The result? A dome that's massive, yet not so heavy it collapses. Gravity works with it, not against it. And all of it was done without modern cranes or steel reinforcements. Just manpower, ingenuity, and probably a lot of grumbling about missing stones. And here's the funny part. People today still scratch their heads about it. Engineers and architects marvel at how such a perfectly balanced structure was built so long ago. Meanwhile, some modern buildings collapse in a few decades, and we think we're smart. Clearly, the Romans were winning the quiet competition of longevity. Of course, the Pantheon wasn't the only temple to impress. Walk around Rome and you'll find temples with columns taller than houses, steps that make you feel small, and interiors designed to focus attention on statues of gods. Even the simplest temple was crafted with precision. Nothing wobbled, nothing felt accidental. The Romans believed that if your temple was solid and harmonious, maybe the gods would appreciate it more, and the city might get a little extra luck. And let's talk about acoustics for a second. Some temples were built so that a whisper near the entrance could be heard across the hall. Not to scare worshippers, but to amplify ceremonies. The Romans were clever like that. They combined beauty, function, and a subtle sense of theater. It's almost like the buildings had personality. Quiet, confident, and a touch playful. Now, about the oculus, the Pantheon's tiny circular opening at the dome's center. It's both functional and poetic. Rain falls in sometimes, sure, but the floor is slightly sloped to drain it away. Sunlight pours through, moving across the interior as the day passes, like the temple itself is tracking time. You could even use it as a giant sundial. It's a simple feature, yet it shows how Roman architects loved combining practicality with elegance. And then there's the scale. The dome is perfectly spherical, as if someone had carved a slice of heaven and put it on top of a giant cylinder. No corners, no gaps, just smooth curves. Standing inside, you feel both protected and humbled. It's the kind of space that makes you whisper, even if no one told you to. Perfect for meditation, reflection, or imagining ancient priests trying to organize a worship ceremony without tripping over each other. Many temples also had elaborate exteriors, columns in the Corinthian style carved with leaves that somehow still seem alive.
pediments filled with sculptures of gods, heroes, and mythical creatures. It's like the Romans wanted to make sure that even if you didn't enter, the temple still whispered stories. And it did. Soft, patient, quiet. 2,000 years later. What's fascinating is how these buildings combined engineering, art, and philosophy. A temple wasn't just a structure, it was a statement about order, harmony, and human ingenuity. The curves taught balance, the columns taught proportion, the ceilings taught restraint. And the oculus? That taught a kind of humility. Look up, realize how small you are, but feel inspired anyway. The Romans were also masters at planning the surrounding area. Temples were often placed on hills or near forums. The approach mattered. A long flight of steps, a clear line of sight, even how shadows moved across the marble at different times of day. Nothing was accidental. Even nature was invited to participate. Sun, wind, and rain all played a quiet role in the experience. And let's not forget about public engagement. Temples were for everyone, not just priests or elites. Citizens walked up the steps, offered small gifts, or simply admired the grandeur. The buildings encouraged reflection and calm, even in a noisy, bustling city. It's a bit like stepping into a cathedral today. Sudden quiet, soft light, and the sense that someone thought carefully about every stone and every space. So, tonight, as you imagine walking into one of these Roman temples, picture the sunlight pouring through the oculus, dust motes floating lazily in the air, hear the faint echo of footsteps from centuries ago. Feel the smooth marble under your hand, the curve of the dome above your head. Notice the quiet confidence of engineers, masons, and architects who worked not for fame, but for perfection. And then, slowly, let yourself drift. The arches above, the columns around, the dome embracing the sky. They all seem to hum a gentle lullaby. Not loud or insistent, just soft, patient, enduring. A reminder that human hands can touch the heavens if they work carefully, thoughtfully, and with a little bit of humor. Because in the end, that's what Roman temples really are. Monuments to patience, precision, and quiet genius. Standing still while centuries pass, welcoming the curious, inspiring awe, and if you listen closely, whispering, look up, be calm. You can build something lasting, too.
If Roman roads were the skeleton and aqueducts the veins, then bridges were the elegant limbs, connecting distant lands and carrying the empire across rivers, valleys, and sometimes stubborn swamps. They didn't shout for attention. They didn't need to. Their purpose was quiet, practical, and endlessly reliable, and that's what makes them fascinating. Rome's engineers faced a tricky problem. How do you cross a river that refuses to be crossed? Some rivers were wide and fast, others shallow but unpredictable. You could ford them if you were lucky, but the army needed speed. Merchants needed safety. So the Romans invented the perfect bridge, a combination of arches, concrete, and the kind of patience that modern city planners weep with envy. Take the Pons Fabricius, built in 62 BCE. It connects two parts of the city over the Tiber River and is still in use today. Yes, you can literally walk across a 2,000-year-old bridge that was built for sandals and chariots, a gentle reminder that Roman engineering wasn't just functional, it was immortal. Bridges were mostly made of stone, carefully cut and arranged into arches. We already know arches are good at holding weight, and over rivers, they were perfect. They distributed pressure evenly, allowed water to flow through the spaces beneath, and stood firm against floods. The Romans didn't rely on glue or steel, just stone, gravity, and impeccable geometry. It's almost like their bridges were meditative exercises. Let's see if we can balance all this weight without crying. Spoiler, they could. Some bridges were short and humble, just enough to connect two neighborhoods. Others were monumental, like the Pons Aemilius, with multiple arches spanning the Tiber. Imagine crossing that as a citizen. Sunlight sparkling on the water, the arches creating reflections like rippling artwork, merchants shouting from the banks, and the gentle clatter of cartwheels. The bridge isn't just a path, it's a stage where life unfolds every day. And then there's the material magic. Many bridges incorporated Roman concrete, the same resilient mix that kept harbors and temples alive. Some had heavy stone bases below the waterline, with lighter blocks higher up. Engineers even accounted for seasonal floods, building the piers strong enough to withstand rushing water. It's like designing a piece of art that also survives every prank nature can throw at it. Bridges weren't just about getting from point A to B. They were symbols of power. If you could walk across a massive stone bridge built by the state, you were reminded that Rome could bend the landscape to its will. It was subtle propaganda. We are strong. We are organized. We even control rivers. And it worked. People noticed. Traders smiled. Armies marched with confidence. Some bridges doubled as aqueducts. Yes, double-duty structures carrying both water and people. A feat of elegant efficiency. Imagine crossing such a bridge. The gentle hum of flowing waters somewhere above your head, shadows of arches dancing on the river below, and the solid stones beneath your feet holding everything together for centuries. The Romans didn't just build infrastructure, they built experiences. And what's even more impressive is maintenance. Roman engineers didn't just build and walk away. They assigned officials to monitor bridges, inspect arches, and repair small cracks before they became problems. It's one thing to construct a bridge, it's another to make sure it lasts 2,000 years. And they managed it, quietly, consistently, like caretakers of the empire's arteries. Walking across a Roman bridge today feels surreal. The arches rise gracefully, sunlight bouncing off stone, water flowing underneath, birds swooping low. You can almost imagine a Roman senator or soldier strolling by, nodding in approval. Good job, ancestors. The sensation is calm, grounding, a perfect setting for reflection. And the designs were elegant, not just functional. Curves and arches weren't arbitrary, they followed principles of proportion. A bridge wasn't merely a structure, it was a statement of harmony, a gentle whisper that beauty and practicality can coexist. Some modern engineers could take notes, quietly and without embarrassment. Bridges also had a social function. They connected cities, yes, but they connected people. Merchants could sell, families could visit relatives, armies could move swiftly. Trade flowed, ideas flowed, culture flowed. In a way, every stone and every arch contributed to the empire's heartbeat, moving life like a gentle, invisible current. And of course, let's not forget the occasional bit of humor that life on a bridge brought. Merchants slipping on wet stone, soldiers pausing to wave at passing boats, and children leaning over parapets to watch fish. The bridges carried stories as well as bodies. The Romans probably didn't intend them as playgrounds, but human nature finds a way. Every bridge has witnessed laughter, chatter, and quiet footsteps, and that's as impressive as its engineering. By now, it's easy to see a pattern. The Romans weren't just building for themselves, they were building for eternity. Every bridge, aqueduct, road, and temple was carefully considered, patiently constructed, and quietly resilient. And bridges, they were the silent connectors, the unseen helpers that held the empire together in a practical and poetic way. So tonight, as you picture a quiet river flowing under a gentle stone arch, let yourself imagine the hands that placed every block, the patience that guided each curve, and the quiet pride of engineers long gone. The river continues to flow, the bridge continues to hold, The city sleeps above, but below, everything is balanced, steady, and serene. And maybe that's the lasting lesson of Rome's bridges. Even in a bustling, messy, complicated world, a little patience, balance, and thoughtful engineering can carry you, literally and figuratively, across anything. 2,000 years later, they're still doing just that.
When you think of Rome, you might picture grand temples, mighty roads, and soldiers marching in formation. But one of the empire's most impressive achievements was a little quieter and a lot more relaxing. I'm talking about Roman baths, or thermae, places where engineering and leisure danced together in perfect harmony. Imagine walking into a massive bathhouse. The air smells faintly of heated water and oils. Sunlight pours through tall windows, bouncing off smooth marble floors. People of all ages are moving through the rooms, chatting, reading, exercising, all in a calm, communal rhythm. It's not just a spa day, it's the heartbeat of the city. Roman baths were more than pools. They were social hubs, libraries, gyms, and even snack bars, the Starbucks of ancient Rome, if you will, without Wi-Fi but with slightly better architecture. You could meet friends, discuss politics, or just soak away the dust and worries of the day. It was public, it was free for many, and it was wonderfully engineered. Speaking of engineering, these baths were marvels. They weren't just holes filled with water. They had intricate heating systems called hypocausts. Here's how it worked. The floor was raised on pillars, creating a hollow space underneath. Hot air from a furnace would circulate through this space, warming the floors and walls. The result? Heated rooms and pools, even on chilly mornings. It's like underfloor heating 2,000 years before your fancy condo had it. The baths were divided into different rooms with different temperatures. Tepidarium, the warm room, perfect for easing in. Caldarium, the hot room, where steam rose like gentle clouds. Frigidarium, the cold plunge, a shocking but refreshing jolt. Citizens would move from one room to the next, letting their bodies adjust, their minds relax, and perhaps even whispered to a friend, civilization is nice. It was a journey, a ritual, a slow dance through warmth, steam, and cool refreshment. The water itself came from aqueducts, of course. Engineers made sure it flowed consistently, didn't stagnate, and remained clean, or at least as clean as a river-fed pool in 100 CE could be. Drains and channels removed used water, and clever designs prevented flooding. The baths were beautiful, functional, and most importantly, comfortable. Romans loved comfort, just quietly, in a disciplined and structured way. And let's not forget about the architecture. The ceilings were domed, echoing the Pantheon. Columns lined the pools. Mosaics on the floors told stories of gods, rivers, and daily life. The entire space was designed to please the eye and calm the mind. You can imagine someone floating in the warm water, looking up at a ceiling painted with gentle blues and golds, feeling a quiet sense of awe. Even for a moment, you forget that life outside is bustling, dusty, and chaotic. Some baths were gigantic. The baths of Caracalla, for example, could hold thousands of people at once. Imagine that, a city within a city, all designed for relaxation and hygiene. Workers stoked the fires, maintained the hypocausts, and kept the pools flowing. Engineers quietly ensured that no floor collapsed under weight, no walls cracked under steam, no water overflowed into the streets. All while citizens enjoyed themselves without thinking about the complex web of pipes and furnaces keeping them comfortable. It's like magic, the best kind, the invisible kind. Bathing wasn't just about hygiene. It was ritual, leisure, and wellness combined. Citizens exercised in the palaestra, the open gym area, received massages, and sometimes even attended lectures. For many, it was a daily meditation, moving slowly through the rooms, letting water and warmth carry away stress. Even emperors visited, albeit with a few guards in tow. It was democracy in comfort, or at least comfort shared widely. And here's a tiny bit of humor. The Romans were obsessed with cleaning tools. They used scrapers called strigils to remove oil and dirt. Some baths even had attendants for this purpose, kind of like ancient personal trainers, but with scraping instead of shouting encouragement. You can picture it. someone gently scraping your back while you float in warm water, thinking, this is the empire at its finest. The engineering brilliance didn't stop at heat. Water flow was carefully planned. Fountains, pools, and drains all worked in harmony. No water wasted, no room left cold, no stone misplaced. It's the same philosophy seen in roads, aqueducts, and temples. Patience, precision, and quiet genius. The baths weren't flashy. They didn't scream, "Look at me." They whispered, "Relax, everything is taken care of." Walking through a bathhouse today, you can almost hear the soft echoes of conversations and laughter. You can imagine children splashing quietly in a corner, elders reclining on marble benches, friends debating philosophy over a warm soak. It's a human symphony, flowing through the arches, domes, and mosaics. The baths weren't just architecture, they were life, slow, gentle, and enduring. And maybe that's why the baths feel so calming even now. They remind us that engineering doesn't have to be harsh. It can be soft, patient, and in harmony with human needs. It can warm your feet, soothe your body, and even your mind. It's practical, yes, but also deeply humane. So, tonight, as you picture the warm water lapping quietly against stone, the steam drifting lazily through domed ceilings, let yourself sink into that calm. Think of the hypocaust humming below your feet, the water flowing smoothly from distant aqueducts, and the architects and engineers who quietly ensured that thousands of Romans could enjoy this comfort every single day. The baths of Rome weren't just places to wash. They were sanctuaries of calm, temples of gentle motion, and reminders that even in the busiest city in the world, there's room for patience, precision, and quiet joy. And as you drift towards sleep tonight, let yourself float through those warm waters too, carried gently by the invisible hands of Roman engineering. Because in the end, the empire's greatest luxury wasn't gold, power, or conquest. It was water, warmth, and the careful, patient thoughtfulness that allowed human life to flow smoothly, just like the water in the baths.
If you wander through Rome today, one building tends to steal your breath quietly, even if you've seen 1,000 photos: the Colosseum. It doesn't scream, it doesn't boast, it just stands, immense and patient, like an old friend who's seen everything and doesn't need to prove a thing. And yet, beneath that calm exterior is the story of human ingenuity, patience, and a touch of theatrical flair. The Colosseum wasn't built in a day, or a month, or even a year. Construction began around 70 CE under Emperor Vespasian and was completed roughly a decade later by his son, Titus. That's a lot of time for planning, lifting, sweating, and probably muttering about missing stones. But the Romans didn't mind patience. They liked projects that lasted centuries. Now let's picture it. The sun rises over the partially built amphitheater. Workers carry massive blocks of travertine and tufa. Engineers measure, align, and check arches. Each piece of stone is placed carefully, like a musician tuning their instrument. Because in this orchestra of stone, even the tiniest misstep could ruin the balance of thousands of tons. The Colosseum wasn't just a building. It was a marvel of design. Its elliptical shape allowed everyone in the audience a clear view of the arena. The arches weren't just decorative, they carried the weight of the massive structure while creating passageways, seating areas, and entrances. It's like combining a pyramid, a stadium, and a circus tent, all without steel or cranes. And somehow it worked perfectly. Beneath the arena floor, there was a network of subterranean passages, cages, and lifts. Animals, gladiators, and props could appear like magic, rising from below to surprise the audience. Imagine being a Roman citizen, sipping wine, and suddenly a lion appears. Not by door, not by stair, but by invisible lift from the earth itself. That's a practical kind of theater. It's also terrifying if you're the gladiator or lion. The seating was meticulously planned, too. Romans loved hierarchy. Senators got the best spots, ordinary citizens the upper tiers.
Engineers ensured that thousands of spectators could enter and leave smoothly, with staircases, ramps, and numbered entrances. Basically, the ancient version of a crowd management app. The attention to detail is astonishing. The building itself was polite, making sure people didn't get trampled while still holding tens of thousands of spectators. And then there's the sheer scale. The Colosseum could hold somewhere between 50,000 and 80,000 people. That's like an entire small city gathered in one place. And every stone, every arch, every corridor worked quietly to make the experience possible, safe, orderly, and breathtaking. The Romans knew how to manage chaos with calm precision. It's a little lesson in life, disguised as architecture. Let's talk about the events, softly, without the gore details. Yes, there were games. Yes, animals and gladiators were involved. But focus on the engineering. Each arena had drainage, so water from rain wouldn't flood the floor. Beneath, lifts and pulleys moved scenery and cages effortlessly. The design considered sound, sight lines, and even ventilation. This wasn't just a building, it was a mechanical marvel disguised as stone. The Colosseum also had a retractable awning system, the velarium, to shield spectators from sun and rain. Sailors from the Navy would pull ropes and hoist the massive canvas, covering entire sections. Imagine coordinating that today, without radios, walkie-talkies, or instructions in bold text. Romans made it work. They choreographed fabric and wind like dancers. And somehow, the building and the awning felt graceful, not chaotic. And here's a little humor. The Colosseum had toilets. Yes, communal seating areas included latrines with flowing water. Even while tens of thousands watched spectacle, some Romans were quietly doing what humans do. Engineering solved that problem seamlessly. The comfort of citizens, even amidst drama, mattered. Walking inside the Colosseum today is like stepping into a slow-motion memory. The arches rise gently, the corridors stretch endlessly, sunlight filters through openings in warm, golden shafts. You can almost hear faint echoes, footsteps, murmurs, the rustle of togas. The building whispers stories, not screaming ones, but gentle, persistent tales of human skill and calm control over massive stone. And the funny part is, it's still sturdy. Earthquakes, neglect, centuries of exposure, yet the Colosseum stands. It has scars, yes, but isn't that beautiful? Imperfections make it human, but its core is solid. It's engineering with a soul, a building that teaches patience, balance, and endurance. Even today, the Colosseum reminds us of Roman priorities. Function first, beauty always, longevity forever. Every stone has a purpose. Every arch distributes weight. Every corridor guides people naturally, and every detail quietly manages chaos, making the extraordinary feel normal. So tonight, as you imagine walking its empty corridors, picture the soft sunlight filtering in, the cool breeze drifting through arches, and the calm certainty that this building has watched centuries pass. Feel the gentle weight of stone beneath your hands, the arches above holding space effortlessly, and the invisible lifts and corridors humming quietly like a heartbeat. The Colosseum is a monument, not just a spectacle, but to human ingenuity, patience, and thoughtful design. It reminds us that the greatest marvels aren't always flashy. Sometimes they're steady, enduring, and quietly magnificent, like a story told in stone that whispers, "We planned carefully, we worked patiently, and we will endure." And as you drift off to sleep tonight, imagine the Colosseum empty, calm, yet alive in its own way, a stone sentinel carrying the echoes of the past, patiently watching over Rome and whispering softly to anyone willing to listen.
When most people think of ancient Rome, they picture bustling streets, crowded forums, or grand monuments. But let's step away from the noise for a moment and wander into the quieter, more serene world of the Roman villa. These were the places where the elite relaxed, planned, and occasionally napped, essentially the ancestors of modern countryside retreats, but with more columns and fewer Wi-Fi issues. A Roman villa wasn't just a house. It was a statement of taste, comfort, and clever engineering, all wrapped in stone, marble, and sunlight. Some villas were sprawling estates in the countryside, overlooking rolling hills and olive groves. Others were tucked just outside the city, providing a peaceful escape from the constant buzz of Rome. Walking into a villa, the first thing you'd notice is the atrium, a central hall that often featured an open roof, letting sunlight and rainwater in. Beneath it, a shallow pool, the impluvium, collected rainwater for practical use. Engineers and architects had designed it to be beautiful and functional, a tiny ecosystem in the heart of the home. It's as if the Romans were whispering, luxury doesn't have to be complicated, it just has to be clever. The rooms surrounding the atrium had high ceilings, mosaic floors, and painted walls. Some villas had frescoes depicting mythological scenes, gardens, or even imaginary landscapes, like a peaceful mind vacation painted directly onto the walls. The colors were soft, yet vibrant, intended to calm and delight rather than overwhelm. Step carefully, and you'd feel the cool marble beneath your feet, the gentle sunlight on your skin, and perhaps even the faint scent of flowers from the garden outside. And yes, villas had private baths, smaller versions of the grand thermae we talked about earlier. They included hypocaust heating, hot and cold pools, and sometimes even steam rooms. Imagine soaking after a long day of leisurely reading, planning, or just staring at your mosaic floor, thinking, I could get used to this. Every detail was designed for comfort, efficiency, and a subtle sense of prestige. The peristyle garden was another hallmark. Columns surrounded a central courtyard filled with greenery, fountains, and pathways. It wasn't just decoration. It provided shade, ventilation, and a gentle rhythm to daily life. As you walked along the paths, you could hear water trickling, birds singing, and leaves rustling. It's a soft, engineered calm that turns a home into a retreat, a living reminder that nature and design can exist in harmony. Some villas were technological marvels as well. They incorporated running water from nearby aqueducts, sophisticated drainage, and even early forms of central heating. Windows and openings were carefully positioned to maximize airflow, keeping interiors cool in summer and warm in winter. Romans understood that true comfort wasn't just in marble floors or mosaic art. It was in engineering that anticipated human needs. They didn't just decorate. They planned, calculated, and executed. Food preparation and storage were also thoughtfully designed. Kitchens had storage for olive oil, wine, and grain, while cellars kept wine cool and cheese preserved. Everything was close at hand, yet hidden from sight. Comfort and efficiency combined. Even servants' quarters were cleverly placed to allow service without interrupting the calm rhythm of the villa. And let's not forget the quiet humor of Roman life. Small fountains that doubled as conversation starters, mosaics depicting playful scenes of animals, or hidden passages that might let a curious guest sneak a peek at the servant's side of life. Roman villas weren't rigidly serious. They had personality, thoughtful, elegant, and occasionally mischievous. Architecture reinforced hierarchy subtly. The owners' rooms were closest to the gardens, well-lit and luxuriously decorated. Guests' rooms were slightly simpler, but still comfortable. Servants naturally had functional but less ostentatious spaces. It's a gentle reminder that even luxury can be organized thoughtfully, without chaos. And the villas weren't just private. Some opened to friends or important visitors, providing spaces for quiet philosophical conversations, poetry readings, or music performances. Imagine reclining on a marble bench, sipping wine, while a friend recited verses about gods, rivers, or love. The architecture enhanced the experience, guiding sound, light, and sight to create calm and focus. Everything felt deliberate, a rhythm of life captured in stone and water. Villas also reflected regional adaptation. Coastal villas might include ports and docks, countryside retreats had gardens and orchards, and city villas were cleverly designed to maximize light and airflow in tight spaces. In all cases, the Romans blended practical engineering with aesthetic delight, showing that luxury and functionality could coexist seamlessly. Even small details mattered. Door hinges, water spouts, and drainage channels were carefully thought out. No convenience was too minor, no comfort too small. Engineers and architects understood that the experience of a villa wasn't just the grand hall or the peristyle garden, but also the tiny details that made life flow smoothly. By now it's clear why villas were considered retreats. They combined engineering, artistry, and human comfort in a way that few modern buildings replicate. Walking through a villa, you could feel a sense of calm, an invisible order, and a subtle humor, the playful touches left by thoughtful humans centuries ago. So tonight, as you imagine stepping into a Roman villa, picture the sunlight pouring into the atrium, mosaics warming your eyes, fountains singing softly, and gentle breezes circulating through the garden. Feel the quiet comfort engineered into every room, the rhythm of water, stone, and air, designed to nurture calm. This wasn't ostentation, it was care, foresight, and patient design, the kind that makes life feel effortless and enduring. And as you drift off to sleep, picture yourself reclining on a marble bench, the soft sound of trickling water in the background, surrounded by carefully placed columns, paintings, and flowers. The villa whispers across the centuries. Relax. Life is balanced. Everything is in its place. And you are welcome here. Because in the end, the Roman villa wasn't just a home. It was a lesson in quiet luxury, thoughtful engineering, and enduring calm. A place where humans and nature, art and function, all coexist in gentle harmony, just as we might hope for in our dreams tonight.
If Roman villas were about comfort and elegance, then the kitchens were the quiet, bustling hearts of these homes. They didn't boast marble floors or lofty columns, but without them, nothing else would work. The kitchens fed the empire, kept guests happy, and even shaped social life, all while staying out of sight, mostly under the hum of daily activity. Let's step into a typical Roman villa kitchen. It's warm, slightly smoky, and smells faintly of baking bread, roasted meats, and herbs. Wood and clay dominate the space. Stone counters, clay pots, bronze utensils. Nothing fancy in appearance, but everything designed to function perfectly. It's the kind of place where efficiency meets calm, almost like a quietly choreographed dance. Most villas had separate areas for cooking, storage, and preparation. Food storage was clever. Cool cellars for wine, dry bins for grain, and amphorae for olive oil, fish sauce, and other liquids. Water flowed in from small channels or stored jars, and waste drained neatly away. Everything had a purpose, and every utensil, pot, or pan had its place. It's engineering in the service of daily life. Nothing fancy, but remarkably effective. And Romans loved organization. Knives, graters, mortars, and pestles weren't scattered randomly. They were arranged for quick access, with workflow in mind. It's like a modern kitchen, but with the patience of someone who knows they're cooking for dozens, sometimes hundreds. Efficiency wasn't rushed, it was carefully orchestrated. Cooking itself involved fire and clever design. The furnaces were carefully controlled, with openings to adjust airflow, maintain heat, and avoid smoke filling the house. Clay ovens baked bread evenly. Pots were suspended or placed on supports, with fuel distributed below. The kitchen hummed with energy, but wasn't chaotic. Even a novice cook could follow the rhythm. Light the fire, place the pot, stir, and let the system do the rest. Meals in Rome were about variety and presentation, even if you were just a busy villa owner. Fish, meats, vegetables, grains, sauces, and fruits, all carefully prepared, some raw, some cooked, some fermented. The kitchen staff might even craft small delicacies like honeyed pastries or flavored oils for guests to enjoy. Every dish passed through a series of well-planned steps, ensuring consistency, safety, and taste. It's culinary engineering, quietly impressive if you pause to think about it. Roman kitchens also reflected hierarchy. Large villas had teams of slaves or servants, some for washing, some for chopping, some for cooking. Their movements were coordinated, almost like a dance troupe. Everyone knew their role, every tool had its place, and the workflow flowed smoothly. A silent rhythm that fed the entire household. Even the emperor's kitchens in Rome were elaborate, yet structured the same way. Order, efficiency, and reliability ruled above all. Water was essential. Some kitchens had small channels running along counters or floors to rinse vegetables or wash dishes. Wastewater was cleverly directed into drains, avoiding the mess that might plague a less thoughtful kitchen. It wasn't glamorous, but it was brilliant. Imagine the sound: gentle trickle, faint bubbling, occasional clink of utensils, a quiet symphony of culinary life. And then there were the tools: mortars and pestles ground herbs and grains, spits rotated on vertical or horizontal rods. Clay pots absorbed heat evenly, keeping sauces and soups warm without burning. Every piece of equipment was simple, durable, and functional. Nothing wasted, nothing excessive. Pure utility with a whisper of elegance. Kitchens were also places of experimentation. Recipes adapted to season, region, and availability. Chefs tested spices, oils, and sauces, creating flavors that surprised and delighted. It's funny to imagine a Roman cook pausing to taste a stew, nodding and thinking, "Yes, this will keep everyone happy and fed." Even in the humblest kitchen, the mind and skill of a thoughtful engineer were at work. Meals themselves often shaped social life. Guests might dine in the triclinium, but their food originated in these hidden spaces. The flow of dishes, timing of courses, and temperature of water and wine all relied on the kitchen's quiet efficiency. Without the unseen work happening behind the walls, the grandeur of Roman dining would collapse. It's a subtle reminder that invisible labor supports visible splendor, a lesson both ancient and timeless. And humor wasn't absent. Slaves and cooks likely whispered jokes, swapped stories, or played tricks on each other, as long as the bread rose, the fish cooked, and the water flowed. Even in a room of work and heat, humanity peeked through. The kitchen wasn't just a place of labor. It was alive, social, and at times playful. Finally, think about scale. Some kitchens served only a single family. Others served entire estates or public banquets. Everything had to scale. Fires had to be larger, storage had to hold more, and tools had to endure constant use. Roman engineers and cooks found solutions: bigger furnaces, cleverly arranged utensils, and simple but strong materials. It's all about balance, efficiency, reliability, and calm control of chaos. So tonight, as you picture a Roman kitchen quietly humming behind the scenes of a villa, imagine the smell of baking bread, the faint heat from the furnace, and the soft sound of water trickling into channels. See the team of cooks moving methodically, each gesture purposeful, each tool in its place, and feel the calm, the order, the subtle artistry hidden beneath the apparent bustle. Roman kitchens weren't just functional. They were lessons in organization, patience, and thoughtful design.
They remind us that life's most important work often happens behind the scenes, quietly, efficiently, and enduringly. And as you drift toward sleep tonight, picture yourself stepping softly into that warm, fragrant space, the heartbeat of the empire, hidden but steady, whispering, "Everything is in place. All is calm. Life flows quietly, beautifully, and without haste."
When we think of ancient Rome, the Forum often comes to mind, not just a square of stone, but the heartbeat of the city, where commerce, politics, and daily life flowed together like a carefully engineered river. Today, we wander through ruins, imagining crowds, merchants, and senators. But back then, every stone, column, and street had a quiet purpose, guiding human activity with subtle precision. The Forum was more than a meeting place. It was Rome's living room, office, and marketplace rolled into one, designed to bring people together while keeping order. Merchants set up stalls, selling everything from fresh bread to exotic spices. Citizens came to trade, argue, or simply observe. Temples watched silently over the activity, stone guardians of faith and commerce. Let's picture the morning. Sunlight filters across cobblestones. A baker opens his stall, placing loaves neatly in woven baskets. Nearby, a fishmonger arranges fresh catch on slabs of marble. Shoppers wander slowly, baskets in hand, exchanging greetings and small jokes. The Forum hums softly, not chaotically. The architecture, the layout, and the flow of space gently guiding everyone's movements. The temples surrounding the Forum weren't just spiritual centers. They were symbols of order and stability. Their tall columns, symmetrical steps, and precise alignment signaled authority and permanence. Even commerce, often chaotic by nature, was framed by these quiet reminders of Rome's structure. Walk too fast, and the buildings seem to slow you down. Pause, and you feel the city's rhythm. Markets were clever in design. Stalls were arranged to allow easy passage, prevent congestion, and ensure sunlight reached each vendor. Drainage channels kept the streets from flooding during rain. Even the placement of fountains and wells was planned, giving thirsty citizens access to clean water without disrupting traffic. It's subtle, unassuming engineering guiding thousands of Romans through daily life without them realizing it. And the Forum wasn't just for buying and selling. It was a place for debates, announcements, and casual conversation. Senators walked purposefully across marble floors, citizens whispered news to neighbors, and children darted between columns. The architecture didn't shout, "Organize yourselves," but quietly nudged behavior with symmetry, openness, and visibility. Roman engineers were masters of subtle influence, showing that good design can shape life without rules. Shops often opened onto the streets with small steps or ramps. Bread, oil, wine, pottery, all displayed neatly for customers to inspect. Merchants used clever shelving and counter layouts to maximize space and visibility. Even small design choices, like placing a water channel at the front of a stall, helped with cleanliness and efficiency. It's a reminder that function and beauty often walk hand in hand, even in the daily grind of commerce. And humor wasn't absent either. Some mosaics in market areas depict animals carrying food, mischievous kids stealing grapes, or satirical scenes of impatient shoppers. The Romans liked a quiet joke, a small nod to life's unpredictability amid order. Markets were practical, yes, but not without character. The Forum also featured temples and basilicas, structures combining commerce, law, and ceremony. Basilicas provided spaces for contracts, legal proceedings, and meetings. Columns guided foot traffic. Vaulted ceilings allowed light to filter evenly. Every element worked silently to ensure activity flowed smoothly. Disputes were settled, and trade could continue uninterrupted. It's the design itself,
a kind of calm management system, invisible but effective. Some markets even had covered sections. Shaded areas allowed for trading during hot afternoons or rainy days. Engineers used wooden beams, tiles, and columns to create light, airy spaces, keeping air flowing and heat manageable. Roman architects were mindful of human comfort while maximizing the utility of space, a quiet but thoughtful kind of genius. Beyond the logistics, the forum represented community. People gathered not only to buy goods, but to exchange news, meet friends, and participate in civic life. It was democratic in spirit, though hierarchies were clear. Seating, steps, and open spaces all considered visibility, audibility, and flow, ensuring that no single part of the crowd dominated inadvertently. It's subtle, almost invisible, but entirely deliberate. Imagine walking through the forum at dusk. Shadows stretch across marble columns. Fountains trickle quietly. The clink of coins fades into soft conversation. Temples loom, serene and enduring. Every movement feels guided, gentle, and purposeful. The city seems to breathe in rhythm with its inhabitants, a calm, steady pulse of daily life. And that's the charm of Roman markets. They weren't chaotic or frantic. They were carefully designed ecosystems, balancing trade, social life, religion, and movement. Every stone, step, and channel served a purpose, quietly shaping the rhythm of the city. Citizens might not have realized it, but their daily routines were guided by centuries of subtle engineering and thoughtful planning. Tonight, as you picture the forum, imagine yourself strolling slowly through it. The warmth of late afternoon sun, the gentle murmur of activity, the shadows stretching across marble steps, all reminding you that even in the busiest, most bustling places, calm, order, and quiet beauty are possible. The Romans knew it. The stones remember. And now, for a moment, so do you.
When you think of ancient Rome, roads might not be the first thing that comes to mind. But in truth, Roman roads were the quiet veins of an empire, carrying soldiers, merchants, messages, and ideas across thousands of miles. Without them, temples, villas, baths, and markets would have been isolated islands. With them, the empire flowed, steadily, efficiently, and enduringly. Imagine a Roman engineer surveying a new path. Rough terrain stretches ahead, hills, rivers, mud, and perhaps an occasional stubborn tree. The goal is simple in theory: make a road straight, durable, and functional. The challenge is, well, everything else. Yet the Romans had patience, determination, and a few clever tricks up their sleeves. A Roman road wasn't just a flattened path. It was a carefully layered system. First came the statumen, a foundation of large stones to provide stability. On top of that, the ruderatio, smaller stones mixed with lime to create a compact layer. Then the nucleus, a fine layer of gravel or sand forming the bed for the final surface. Finally, the summum dorsum, the paved surface of large polygonal or rectangular stones carefully fitted together. Step carefully, and you'd notice how even water runoff was considered. Slight camber in the center guided rain to drainage ditches. It's a road designed to last centuries, quietly engineered without shouting, fuss, or unnecessary embellishment. And at last, it wasn't about aesthetics. The Roman roads were surprisingly pleasing. Lines of stones, gentle curves, and predictable edges made for a path that felt balanced and reliable. Walk it today, and you feel the same, steady underfoot, guiding your steps as if the earth itself is quietly whispering, "This way," calmly, carefully. The scale of Roman roads was impressive.
Some connected Rome to distant provinces, Gaul, Britannia, Hispania, Africa. They cut through forests, spanned rivers with bridges, and climbed mountains with switchbacks. Roads weren't straight just for speed. Engineers considered gradients, materials, and local climate to ensure longevity and ease of use. It's as if each mile was a conversation between humans and the land. We'll work with you, carefully, patiently. And yes, there was some humor in the design. Milestones, tall stone markers placed along the roads, indicated distances and often noted which emperor commissioned the construction. Imagine a Roman traveling slowly, passing these stones and thinking, another milestone, progress. Even in bureaucracy, there's a small, quiet delight. A reminder that careful planning makes life predictable and slightly amusing. Roads weren't just for travel, they were military arteries. Soldiers could march, supplies could move, and messages could travel quickly across vast territories. Mail, proclamations, and trade followed the same paths. Even ordinary citizens benefited. Traveling artisans, merchants, and families used these roads to connect with the broader world. Every stone contributed to a rhythm of life, moving people and ideas calmly yet efficiently. Construction required skill, patience, and manpower. Surveyors measured gradients. Teams quarried stones, cut them to size, and fit them into place. Workers mixed layers of gravel, sand, and lime. Roads often took years to build, yet Romans saw this as part of the process, slow, meticulous, and purposeful. They weren't building just for the present. They were building for centuries. And they succeeded. Many Roman roads survive today, still recognizable, still guiding footsteps, quietly 2,000 years later. The secret? Materials, layers, drainage, and meticulous planning. The Romans understood that durability comes from patience, preparation, and attention to detail, lessons that modern roads sometimes forget. Roads also shaped settlement patterns. Villages, towns, and cities often grew along them. Markets, baths, temples, and forums clustered near these arteries. Infrastructure guided life quietly, subtly, and efficiently. A calm engineering hand directing the flow of a bustling empire. It's a reminder that human ingenuity doesn't always need to shout. Sometimes it whispers through stone, gravel, and carefully angled surfaces. Walking along a Roman road today, you can almost hear the quiet rhythm of history. Carriages' wooden wheels clattering, soldiers' boots thudding, merchants' chatter echoing. You notice the slight camber guiding water to the sides, the neat layering of stones, the occasional milestone catching your eye. The road is alive in its own way, patient, deliberate, and enduring. Even small design details mattered. Bridges over rivers, stone steps on hills, and carefully drained sections of road all contributed to a network that functioned smoothly. Engineers anticipated floods, wear, and human behavior. It's invisible genius, working silently, efficiently, and quietly magnificent. Tonight, imagine yourself walking a Roman road, the soft crunch of gravel underfoot, sunlight warming the stones, a gentle breeze rustling nearby trees. Each mile reflects the hands of careful planners, patient workers, and thoughtful engineers. The path guides your steps without effort, supporting your journey and whispering the centuries into your mind. Roman roads weren't just stone and gravel. They were the pulse of an empire, moving people, ideas, and goods calmly across continents. They remind us that infrastructure, patience, and thoughtful engineering create stability and longevity. And as you drift into sleep tonight, picture yourself stepping along one of these roads,
feeling the smooth layers beneath your feet, following the gentle slope, and letting the quiet guidance of ancient hands lead you toward dreams. Because in the end, Roman roads were more than paths. They were lessons in patience, foresight, and enduring calm, whispering across time. Step carefully, move steadily, and all will endure.
The lasting legacy of Roman engineering. Bridges, roads, villas, baths, and markets weren't just impressive in their own time. Many of them still stand, whispering lessons across 2,000 years. They are gentle reminders that thoughtful design, patience, and practicality can outlast even empires. Let's start with bridges. Walking across a Roman bridge today, you feel the same careful balance that engineers intended centuries ago. Arches rise gracefully over rivers, some still carrying footsteps across the Tiber, the Danube, or even more remote rivers in Europe. The secret? Geometry, stone, and precise placement. No glue, no steel, just pure physics and patience. It's engineering that doesn't boast, but endures quietly. Roads are another testament. Many modern highways trace the paths of Roman roads, often without realizing it. The Romans measured gradients, layered materials meticulously, and incorporated drainage, all so travelers could move safely and efficiently. These roads weren't flashy, they didn't demand attention, yet they shaped the growth of continents, the spread of ideas, and the very rhythm of civilization. Even today, you step onto a Roman road and feel a calm continuity that links the past to the present. And the Colosseum, the crown jewel of Roman entertainment, stands as a symbol of meticulous planning. Its arches, corridors, and underground lifts weren't just clever tricks. They were functional design that orchestrated human movement and spectacle. It reminds us that engineering can combine practicality with awe, structure with experience, and utility with subtle art. Roman baths, meanwhile, teach a quieter lesson. Hypocausts, heated pools, and water channels weren't just for comfort. They demonstrated that engineering can nurture calm, wellness, and human connection. Even in leisure, the Romans thought deeply about flow, warmth, and durability. Their designs weren't temporary indulgences. They were long-term, patient solutions that still inspire wonder today. Villas, too, continue to whisper stories of careful planning. Peristyle gardens, private baths, and intricate mosaics reflect a deep understanding of human comfort and environmental design. Architecture, engineering, and daily life intertwined effortlessly, demonstrating that luxury need not be chaotic. A villa was a place where order, beauty, and calm coexisted, much like the gentle rhythm we hope to capture tonight. Even the kitchens and markets of Rome reveal an enduring wisdom. Behind every meal, every loaf of bread, every bustling stall lay careful planning, simple materials, and coordinated effort. The flow of people, goods, and water was deliberate, thoughtful, and surprisingly modern. It's a quiet lesson. The foundations of civilization are often invisible, efficient, and enduring. So what does this all mean for us, centuries later? It means that Rome's greatest engineering feats weren't just physical structures, they were philosophies in stone, water, and mortar. Patience mattered. Durability mattered. Balance mattered. And above all, designing with human needs in mind mattered most.
Much of the world today still benefits from these silent legacies. Road networks trace Roman paths. Bridges guide traffic across centuries-old foundations. Bathing traditions echo in spas and wellness centers. Architecture borrows columns, arches, and proportions from these silent masters. Even our modern understanding of city planning, drainage, and crowd management owes a nod to Rome. The empire may have fallen, but its engineering whispers calmly and persistently across time. And there's a gentle human lesson here, too. Rome teaches us that thoughtfulness, patience, and attention to detail endure far longer than flashiness or noise. The engineer who places a stone carefully, the planner who channels water thoughtfully, the architect who balances beauty and function, these are the ones who leave lasting impact. Rome shows that even small, quiet efforts can ripple across centuries. As we conclude, imagine yourself walking through the ruins one last time. Bridges stretching over calm rivers. Roads guiding your steps through distant hills. Baths filled with warm, steaming water. Markets alive with soft chatter. Villas basking in sunlight. And above it all, the Colosseum's silent arches rising majestically. Everything tells the same story. Calm, careful engineering can shape the world not just for a moment, but for generations. And perhaps that's the final gift of Rome, the idea that we too can build patiently, thoughtfully, and with care, leaving quiet, enduring footprints behind. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, picture these wonders. See the layers of stone in a road. Feel the arches of a bridge. Hear the gentle trickle of a bath. Smell the bread in a kitchen. And imagine the soft chatter in a market. Every detail, every structure, every quiet choice of the Romans whisper, take your time, plan carefully, build thoughtfully, and your work will last. And as the empire's echoes fade into the night, let yourself rest in the calm, enduring rhythm of Rome. Its engineering is not just history, it's a lullaby, a patient, thoughtful hum across time, inviting you to sleep, reflect, and dream. Rome didn't need to shout. It built quietly, carefully, and beautifully, and centuries later, it still speaks to anyone willing to listen. And tonight, you are one of those listeners. Good night, and may the calm wisdom of Rome carry you softly into sleep.